Well, thank you very much for joining me in this video. I want to tackle TRESA, the Trust and Real Estate Services Act, and specifically implied agency. As you know, TRESA has been in the works for some time. It was originally going to get rolled out 1st of April, then it was extended, and now it's just a few days away. And there's been a lot of training on it. The board has facilitated training. The Ontario Real Estate Association has rolled out training on it, as has RECO. And this is not intended to be exhaustive training, although I will say that I'm going to be doing some training in the next few days. And if you happen to be watching this video and you're not part of RE/MAX Garden City, you're welcome to come. And I will promise you that I never use this as a underhanded way to try and recruit. I'd love to have good agents come over, of course, but I'll never put you in that spot if you want to come. If you want to, you're welcome to. There'll be some information at the end as how you can register. We want to make sure there's adequate seating. You'll see that at the end. But what I want to talk about today is the specific application of TRESA as it applies to implied agency. And to do that, I need to go and zero down on a couple of definitions. The first thing is there's broker representation and designated representation. First, broker representation. That's what we're used to now. When you, as a salesperson, take a listing, you're listing it in the name of your company. And that seller is entering into an agreement with the company. And every salesperson within that company becomes their agent. It's a little bit like under the common law of agency. Let's suppose we were selling soybeans, we were selling wheat, and we knew exactly how many bushels we had available. We knew what the price per bushel was. We knew what the moisture content was. And it was deemed that every employee for the company knew all that information. Well, under the common law of agency, it's understood that in real estate, the same thing applies. So if I take a listing and I know certain things that the seller knows, it's expected that everybody else in the company knows that information. That wasn't really practical, but that comes under broker representation. What they're developing now under TRESA is the opportunity for designated representation. And that's where I, as an individual salesperson, can go and sign up a buyer, or I can take a listing, and the listing or the buyer, it's a specific relationship between myself and them. And RECO's been working on that for some time, allowing the name to change, so we can call ourselves agent now, so that it's understood that if I take a listing and I'm the designated representative, then I am, not my company. My company doesn't owe confidentiality, full disclosure, and they're not going to hear things that I know. It's a totally separate thing that's created by documentation when I take the listing or I sign somebody up for a buyer representation agreement. So that's broker representation or designated representation. Keep that in the back of your mind. The other thing is the term self-represented party. That's new. We used to have customer, and we're doing away with the term customer altogether, and we're using the term self-represented party. And so as far as RECO is concerned, there are two camps in the reality of real estate. There is a client and there is a self-represented party, no customer. And here's a fine line definition. A customer was an unrepresented party who received services from the brokerage. A self-represented party is an unrepresented party that does not receive services from the brokerage. Baby, you're on your own. So you need to understand that. Now, how do we decide whether somebody's a self-represented individual or whether they are represented? Well, we do that by, first of all, going through an information and disclosure of self-representation party form. We give them that form, go over it, and I'm not going to get sidetracked into that because we just don't have the time for that. But we go through the process and we finally determine, yes, this person is a self-represented individual. They are not a client. Now, as a self-represented individual, I can't provide services, but there are certain things that I can do, and they like to use the word assistance. I can provide assistance as opposed to services. And the assistance I can provide is that I can provide, first of all, I can discuss overall market conditions. Somebody comes up to me, we don't know whether they're going to be a client or whether they're going to be a self-represented individual. They say, what's the market like? What's this? What's that? I can get into those conversations. I talk about general things in the market and general things about real estate. I'm certainly allowed to do that. But at some point in time, when it's decided that they're a self-represented individual, I can provide assistance provided that it is in my client's best interest, or that it is ancillary to my client's best interest. So RICO says, all right, I can show the property, well, if it's my listing or if it's my company listing. If I am the agent for the seller, then it's in my seller's best interest to have exposure to their property, and I can take the self-represented individual and I can show them that property. I can't show them a cooperating broker's property. I can show them a property as long as the person who is the seller is my client. And the other thing it says is I can assist them in preparing an agreement of purchase and sale. So here's the thing. This is the challenge. And the challenge comes back to what I want to talk about, implied agency. And I'm going to read it for a second. If I can give you some of the legal definition of it, it says implied agency is an agency relationship that is established by the actions and conduct of the parties. Goes on to say an implied agency in real estate is created when a principal engages an agent to help them with a real estate transaction. So if I'm using my expertise and understanding and I'm providing it to them, or if they are relying on me in some way, agency's created. Now, I want you to imagine that we're going to talk about showing property. If I am showing my seller's property to a non-represented or a self-represented individual, one of the things incumbent on me is to point out latent defects. I have an obligation. The law says it isn't just enough to put it in an SPIS and make it available. I got to make sure that the person buying the property has it in their hands and sees it. If I'm not using an SPIS, I've got to tell them. They're relying on me to tell them. Oh, there's that word, relying. Here's the problem. I have an obligation to tell them. If they're relying on me to tell them, we're creating agency. We're crossing that line. The other thing is in preparing the offer. Now, one of the courses, it says, well, you can hand them a sheet of paper. Well, handing them a sheet of paper isn't the same as providing assistance. I can sit down and I can draft out the offer. So if they say, how much should I offer? I say, I'm sorry, that's totally up to you. And I put down what they say. How much we offer as a deposit? That's totally up to you. And I put down what they say. But what happens when I get into things like contingent on a sale of property? Well, they're going to say, well, what's that? And I start to explain to them. Or I say, we really need to put an escape clause. Well, what's an escape clause? And I begin explaining that. Now, it's been suggested that we just don't do any of that. We take it to our seller, and the seller does, by the way of a counter offer, fill in all these things. Fine. What do we do with that? We take it back to the self-represented individual, hand it to them, they look it over, they say, well, what does this mean and what does this mean? We begin to explain it to them. And once again, we're crossing the line and we're creating agency. We're creating agency by implied agency. It's a problem. It was a problem under customer service, but we didn't take it that seriously. But I think in many cases, we turn customers into clients by implied agency. But anyway, now this is what we have to work with now. And with self-represented individuals, here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to suggest this. I'm going to suggest that when you take a listing, take it as a designated representative. You be the listing agent, not your company, but you. The other thing I'm going to suggest is sit down with your seller and explain to them the pitfalls of a self-represented individual. The key here is because I am the designated representative, I'm the only one that can show that property to a self-represented individual. Other people in my firm can't, other people in cooperating broker can't, only I can. And so I'm going to get my seller, I'm going to explain to them the pitfalls of self-represented individuals, and I'm going to get them to give me, if they're willing to, a direction that I am not to show the property to self-represented individuals. Now I've taken it off the table. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about crossing a line. I don't have to worry about implied agency. It's all taken care of. Now, the one downside of this is that if we go with designated representation, and I really think that's the way to do it, if we go that way, as opposed to brokerage representation, if it's brokerage representation, I'm working with a self-represented individual, I can technically show them any listing in my firm because I am the client, the agent for all those clients because that's my firm. When I'm designated representative, I can only do it for my particular one. But really, I don't think that's a huge thing because I don't think we really want to get involved and entangled with self-represented individuals if we can possibly avoid it. Hope that didn't come across as too confusing. I hope I can clear up a lot more of the aspects of it in the course we're doing in a few days. And I want to thank you very much for investing your time and watching this video.